Jake the Snake, yes, you're first. 1,000 Pine points to you. Worldview Detective. That's 2 days in a row. You got second. 500 Pine points, or 2 live streams in a row. And Jax 12. Yes, yo, you're third. 250 Pine points to you. DB Cisco. I is early. You are early, but not early enough. You're not good enough. Do better next time. May the Lord have mercy on your soul. I don't think have I done a video on Deflate before? Maybe I have, but I don't remember. No, I don't think I did. So Deflate is a guy, I think he's German. But we won't hold that against him. We won't hold, maybe he's not German. I shouldn't say that. I have no idea where he's from. But he has some type of accent. I don't have an accent. Sorry, but I don't. 7.54K subscribers. Smaller channel than me, but this video has done very well. 26,873 views. It's because he's featuring this guy. Try to get views when you feature like nobodies. Yeah, that's tougher. But you know, Alex is a famed atheist YouTuber that a lot of Christians, I think, like. It's because he's just so apple pie faced, I guess. Although in this picture, he looks like his hair needs a washing, needs a shave. I'm just appearance shaming Alex. I usually don't go live at this hour, but so this is a strange hour, so I'm not sure how many viewers we'll get, but I am open to having to call in later, and I'm not sure if anybody will call in. It seems like everybody is, except for the Muslims, or they don't want to call in, and a few weird Christians will call in. Alan Bird says, if PineCreek was still a Christian, I would get some pine points. The first shall be last. Well, yeah, you're not even last, though. You're somewhere in the middle. Give PineCreek an upper or something. Why do I need an upper? How do I change the speed to 1.5? Am I going too slow? Okay, I'll talk really fast. How's that? Here we go. Let's begin.
In this video, what I think is the hardest objection to respond.
By the way, I listened to this very quickly at 2x one time. I had some thoughts, but I never wrote them down. So basically, I'm listening to this for the second time, barely, and we'll see if Deflate really does debunk atheism. You know, Randall Rouser just did a tweet about that. Whenever someone says that you've destroyed or debunked something, odds are they're hyping up an argument that they really don't have a great argument for. Sort of like the Apostle Paul when he says we destroy every argument against Christianity, basically. You know, the Apostle Paul felt insecure about his beliefs as well as Deflate here.
To if you're a Christian.
Cosmic Skeptic recently published a video where he talks about what he believes to be Christianity's biggest problem, the problem of animal suffering. In this video, I'm going to tell you why Alex's case is essentially an emotional appeal that directly contradicts evolutionary theory.
Yeah, I get the impression that this Deflate guy, I wish I knew his real name, thinks that emotional appeals are bad. Now, the philosophical types who've taken 3 credit hours at university and think they know something, they will say that it is indeed a fallacious. It's a fallacy to appeal to emotion. But we're not talking about syllogisms here. You can appeal to emotion for good reason. In fact, Christianity is one big appeal to emotion. You want eternal life, don't you? You want your guilt removed, don't you? You want your sins forgiven, don't you? You want to avoid the pain of hell, don't you? If those are not appeals to emotion, I don't know what is. The root core of Christianity is Jesus died for your sins. He loves you so much. He died for you. Christianity is nothing but, no, I shouldn't say it that way. The core propositions of Christianity are appeals to emotion. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm just saying, look, and I'm not even sure if this guy's saying it's bad, but I get the impression the first time I watched it, he used the word emotion a lot. So I think he's kind of saying Alex is just like a little baby boy and stop with your feelings already and grow up, be a man, stop with these emotions. That's the impression I get, but I could be wrong.
But that's not even...
Oh yeah, his name is Lucas. Yeah, I think he says it in this video, right?
even the half of it, because what you're about to witness is how cosmic skeptic's biggest shot against Christianity surprisingly turns into his most powerful argument for it.
Plot twist. What we thought was going to be something that debunks theism is actually debunks atheism. Who would have thunk it?
This is going to be very exciting. Hi, my name is Lucas and this is my channel Deflate, which challenges skeptics, strengthens believers and aims to create great conversations about God. Guys, it is super important to me to make clear from the start that I really respect and appreciate Alex, and that everything I'm about...
I need to say from the very start, I really don't know Deflate at all, and I don't hate him or respect him. Respect has to be earned.
What to say is meant as an engagement with his worldview rather than as an attack against him personally. Now you have to know that the case Alex puts forward has nothing to do with animal suffering which is inflicted by humans. Instead, he exclusively focuses on the suffering wild animals endure apart from human involvement. And you're about to hear plenty of examples of that from Alex himself. His claim is essentially that the existence of an all-powerful and all-loving God is implausible given the amount of pain animals have to live with in the natural order created by God. And since there are literally trillions of animals, the problem of animal suffering is, according to Alex, even bigger than the problem of human suffering. Or as he puts it,
if the problem of suffering is historically one of Christianity's biggest problems, then the problem of animal suffering is its biggest.
Here is how he starts his case.
So I should probably begin by unpacking why animal suffering is such a problem worth addressing in the first place. If human life is, as I've argued, infused with pain, then non-human animal life is defined by pain.
Okay, let's pause here for a moment. I don't know where Alex gets this idea that animal life is defined by pain.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if this is petty or not. I mean, petty on Deflate's part. I think what Alex is saying here, animal life is defined by pain, is just saying that it's more than human pain in its entirety. And we are animals. And I know where this is going, not just because I've watched it quickly the first time, but my question to a guy like Deflate is, if there were no humans at all on planet Earth, no Homo sapiens that worship your God, no Adam and Eve, why would there be any suffering, any animal suffering? Just one instance of animal suffering, why? Now, if you ask that question to Christians about humans, they would say, well, something to do with free will, right? God didn't want robots, so he had to give humans free will. And that's why we have suffering. But does that argument work for animals? Do animals have free will in the sense of choosing to worship God? Why is there more than one? Why is there any animal suffering at all? And I think from Deflate's worldview, he has to say, because of humans, but I've taken humans off the table. So then I think the only thing he can say is, I don't know morally sufficient reasons. Right? Isn't that where Christians usually go? I don't know why there's animal suffering if there was no humans, if there were no humans. Maybe he would just say, no, there wouldn't be any animal suffering if there were no humans, because humans caused animal suffering when they fell in the Garden of Eden. In fact, I bet you 1,000 pine points, and I'll up it. I'll bet you 10,000 pine points that that's what Deflate believes. That there would be no animal suffering if Adam and Eve wouldn't have fallen in the garden. And I'll bet you another 10,000 pine points Deflate believes that Adam and Eve were two real people who actually were tempted and took of some type of fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and that's what caused sin to enter the world. I bet you he agrees with the Apostle Paul. And then that caused birth pains, not only in humans and in women, especially when they do give birth, and not only for men, so they have to work hard to get food out of the soil, but I bet you Deflate believes that that's when animals started to eat each other. I think he has this picture of life here on Earth a gazelle would just run gently right past the lion, and the lion would lift up his paw and wave at the gazelle. By the way, someone should tag Deflate, Lucas. I should have done that earlier. And let him know I'm live. And if he wants to join me, he's more than welcome to. I also just invited Jonathan McClatchy because he wanted to talk to me about something, but he says, unfortunately, I have a class this evening, some other time. Okay.
I mean, are we really to believe that the thing that defines a dolphin, a butterfly, or a chimpanzee is the experience of pain? Why?
Chimpanzee? I love that. A tribe of chimpanzees.
Why is this the ultimate identity marker for what it means to live as an animal? Why not the urge to reproduce or the urge to feed? No, it's pain, says Alex, and we're gonna see later that this directly contradicts evolutionary theory. But let's indulge.
Spartan Theology says, I tend to think that animals don't experience suffering in the way you or Alex are portraying it. You said is portraying it, but I think it's, oh no, you said or. Or is and are. I think you're right. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the whole term, well, no, I'd say animals experience pain like us. I think it's safe to say that because we experience pain and can vocalize what it's like, I think it's a safe assumption that animals experience pain like us. But I have heard Christians, other than you, say something similar. Is it William Lane Craig who has argued that animals don't really experience pain? And the thing is, it's such a ludicrous statement, in my opinion, to say something like that, which tells me the reason why some Christians say animals don't experience pain is because they realize it is a problem for them. Because let's be clear, well, I don't know Deflate. I don't know what he exactly believes, but again, I'm going to bet 10,000 pine points that he believes that lions don't go to hell for eating a gazelle. I bet you 10,000 pine points. I'm a little less confident in this one, but I bet you he believes that lions don't go to heaven either, even if they do place their trust in Jesus. Simba, place your trust in Jesus so you can go to lion heaven. I don't think he believes that. Maybe he does. So this whole issue of pain and suffering in the animal kingdom, there isn't the free will to worship a deity. I don't think Christians believe that. There's no afterlife for them. I think most Christians believe that. So there shouldn't be any instances of animal suffering at all, right? Based on the same, at least based on the same reasons that many Christians give why there's pain and suffering for humans.
Indulge Alex for a moment and see why he thinks that pain is the real deal.
Animals in the wild are subject to endless torment from all angles of their existence.
Yeah, sure, I totally buy that. No, I mean, come on, seriously? Does Cosmic Skeptic really think that we're gonna fall for his emotional appeal? That all animals from the moment they're born until they die?
Yeah, see, this is why I think he thinks this emotional appeal is bad. Just the way he's saying it here. I wonder if he would say the same thing next time a Christian brings up a picture of a dismembered fetus from an abortion. And a guy like me says, oh yeah, we're not going to fall for that emotional appeal. Let's be straight. Emotional appeals work for a reason because we're emotional creatures.
Are endlessly tormented?
And for the record, I'm mostly against abortion, so don't think I'm whatever. I'm probably more on Deflate's side when it comes to issues of abortion. But again, I don't know what this guy believes.
Man, and I always thought Alex doesn't believe in hell. Yeah, I mean, look at these. The torment is tremendous.
Oh, now this is a low blow, I think, Deflate. Look at the cute little bear cubs playing in the woods. Kissing. It's, you know, for every picture of this, how many pictures I could show of a bear eating an animal alive while it's screaming in pain, and then the bear's taking out the intestines and gobbling it down.
Or hear torment from every angle of their existence. I mean, consider that while you're watching this video, every wild animal is being tormented every single second of its life.
Yeah. Maybe I should encourage Deflate to show pictures of humans playing in the park the next time a mother cries that her son was killed in a car accident or killed from a disease. That's just an emotional appeal. Look, let me show you a video of kids playing in the park and it'll make you feel better.
God is so mean, but Alex isn't done yet.
They suffer from predation by other animals. Wild dogs disembowel their prey. Venomous snakes cause slow internal bleeding and paralysis. Crocodiles drown large animals in their jaws.
Now, the topic of predation features very prominently in Alex's talk, and he makes a big deal out of the fact that animals can die a violent death as a result of it. I will pick this up later and show you why in his emotional fervor, Alex completely misses the point here. Finally,
and animals also suffer from rampant disease, dehydration, and starvation. They have to contend with forest fires and floods and a whole manner of other terrifying natural disasters.
Oh boy, I mean, yes, you're right. Look at the dehydration.
Oh boy, I mean, yes, you're right. It's like, I want to say you're just doing these emotional appeals, but yeah, you are right.
These elephants suffer while they are being endlessly tormented by the lack of water.
Oh my goodness. Alex is not saying that animals don't have fun or don't have pleasure or don't have moments of where they're not, in pain. Of course, animals can have what we would call joy, pleasure, just relaxing times, fun. But to play videos of cubs playing in the grass and elephants frolicking in the water, it misses the point. Come on.
Oh, clearly, Alex is spot on. Now, maybe this was cheap.
Okay, so he admits this is cheap. So then why'd you do it? I guess for entertainment.
Sorry, but please allow me to explain myself. First, my point is not to make fun of Alex because he cares for animals, not at all. I am the truly happy father of a 9-year-old boy, my son Aaron, who has single-handedly organized over 30 kids at his school into a Safe Green and Save Animals advocacy group and leads them in picking up trash and helping worms, bugs, and ants in the school courtyard.
Worms and ants? Okay, this is where I draw the line. That's not saving animals. Come on, worms and ants? No, bears and tigers. The odd bird. Although birds are so ugly when they're, it's hard to say birds. But, cute bears and worms and ants? Come on.
I feel nothing but gratitude and respect for the drive he has, and I can honestly say that his passion challenges me. In the same way, the authentic example Alex sets when it comes to caring for animal well-being unsettles me in a very positive sense. In fact, I've told my son Aaron about Alex, and I have explained to him that we can learn an awful lot from Alex.
Let's save animals.
So yes, that's my son, and again, my point is not to make fun of Alex. But what I want you to catch is this. Alex's case is essentially an
Yes, Sanjeev, I admitted that too. He does it for entertainment. That first whole part was it sarcasm? But there was a dig in it. Like when I use sarcasm, there's a dig in it. He showed those pictures of animals frolicking for a reason, because he wants to poke Alex a little bit.
Emotional appeal that seriously lacks nuance. Now, given that Alex feels passionate about animal well-being, it's only natural for him to throw his emotions into the mix.
See, that's like the 5th time he's used that word emotion. It's like, I'm a stoic, Lucas. Maybe you're a stoic too, but come on, you got to be real. Like, don't poo-poo all those humans out there who love emotion.
In fact, I have pointed out in another video that I highly respect Alex for not just engaging in disinterested armchair philosophy, but for actually living out the stuff he talks about. So my criticism applies not in the slightest to Alex as a person, but to Alex's case, which essentially presents us with a one-sided story replete with emotions, you know?
Yeah, I hear what Lucas is saying here. Alex is painting this one-sided story that animals sounds like go through nothing but pain and suffering. But the question remains on the table. If there were no humans, you could even pretend there were humans as long as you don't believe in the Adam and Eve story, which I think he does. So pretend there's no humans. Why is there one instance? Why is there any instances of pain and suffering in the animal kingdom? Is that what you would expect from an all-loving, merciful God? Maybe some Christians would say yes. I don't know. But it's really hard to think of a reason, a morally sufficient reason, why God would create something to have just even one instance of pain and suffering. Maybe God likes pain and suffering, and maybe that's a reflection of his nature. He did like to have pain and suffering on his son, so maybe God is like that, and it does kind of enjoy a few instances here and there of animals torturing each other.
If Alex wouldn't have gone all emotional on us with his talk of the endless torment and insidious levels of unthinkable suffering...
Okay, now he put this in quotes. Did he actually? Maybe he did.
...endured by animals, but presented a factually more accurate picture of how sentient existence actually plays out, his case wouldn't even be half as appealing. Philosophical arguments simply don't work that way, and we are about to see how Alex's ideas directly contradict evolutionary science, which Alex hijacks to make his case. But first, I just want to point out what's at stake here, and this is critical. Remember that, according to Alex, animal suffering is not just any old problem Christianity faces, but it's historically its biggest problem. He claims that it's far easier to explain the tremendous amount of pain plaguing animals against the assumption that an all-loving and all-powerful God does not exist.
Yeah, and I think he says that for a couple of reasons. Maybe he'll say it here, but one is because just the amount of suffering is higher in the animals because there's more animals than humans, and because you don't have these reasons to explain it like you do with humans. Christians don't have reasons to explain it like they do with humans. There's no issue of free will and the love and worship of God, and there's no afterlife to deal with. So then why are animals created in such a way that this happens even once? Shouldn't even happen once, unless God just likes animals to suffer.
Now, pause. Think about this. What would we expect to find if we assume that there is no God, and animals in nature are just randomly mutating and evolving and competing for resources with no divine guidance? Well, we'd expect pretty much exactly what we observe in the real world, a messy bloodbath and a struggle for survival. And what would we expect to see if we assumed the existence of an all-loving and all-powerful God? Maybe some level of suffering that we might not be able to fully explain.
See, I disagree with Alex here. Every human being will have different expectations because basically it's a human's opinion. But especially if you take humans out of the picture, because humans came after most animals, right? Yes. It's only 200,000 years in our history, whereas animals go much further back than that. I would expect if there was a all-loving, caring, compassionate God, I would expect every instance of animal behavior to resemble those cubs playing in the grass, enjoying life. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my expectations are wrong. Maybe the creator of the universe just, for a certain percentage of the time likes to see animals frolic in the grass, and another percentage of the time just likes to see animals eat each other, because that's just the way God is. He likes to see blood and gore and death.
But nothing even remotely approaching the level of horror and pain that actually exists in the natural world. It is incalculably easier to account for this suffering on an atheistic worldview.
Now let's apply Alex's logic to the following hypothetical scenario. Let's say we happened not to find a messy bloodbath and that it was not the case that animal life is defined by pain. But
yeah, that whole phrase, defined by pain, is going to bite Alex in the butt. You shouldn't have said it like that. Because this guy, when he hears defined by pain, he's picturing Alex saying that, I don't know what percentage, but like the vast majority of the time, animals are doing nothing but suffering. And I don't think Alex is saying that, but the way he phrased it, defined by pain, makes it sound that way to Lucas here of Deflate.
But instead, we found a world in which animal life happens to be defined by pleasure. A world in which animals are not endlessly tormented in an earthly hell, but where they are alive and well, healthy and happy, and enjoying themselves in a kind of earthly heaven instead.
Oh, an earthly heaven. Like, I don't know, Lucas, do you believe that 90% of every species that's ever lived on planet Earth has gone extinct? Do you believe a big rock hit the Gulf of Mexico, what was it, 150 million years ago or 200 million years ago? And that caused a big cloud and animals slowly died off? Are you including this in your calculation of how much pain versus how much pleasure there's been for animals? I don't know if you believe any of this stuff.
Such blissful animal existence would not, according to Alex's own logic, constitute the biggest problem of Christianity, but the biggest problem.
Mitch Mazzaroli says, is it just me or is it the background music employed by Deflate scene chosen to appeal to my emotions? I'm now confused. Yeah, I tell you, I feel like I'm going into a trance here with that background music, Lucas. I mean, it's just your beautiful accent and the soft music in the background. I feel controlled. I feel manipulated into believing everything you say. Take me. Take me.
Of atheism. Because if it is incalculably easier to account for the suffering, that is, the horror and pain that actually exists in the natural world on an atheistic worldview, it also holds that it would be incalculably harder to account for a happy animal existence on an atheistic worldview, and at the same time, incalculably easier to account for it on a Christian worldview.
Yeah, I would respectfully disagree here. I would say that if we take humans off the table, which is the last 200,000 years of our 4.6 billion year history on planet Earth, I would expect zero suffering from animals. Because, you know, even in your own worldview, which I'm quite sure you believe, there'd be no sin, no fall, if there's no humans. There shouldn't be any suffering. I don't even think, under your own worldview, that if a lion accidentally tripped on a rock, it would moan and say, ouch. But maybe you don't believe that. I don't know. And the thing is, an internal critique of what I think this guy believes is the suffering that is on planet Earth is caused by humans. Animal suffering is caused by humans because God not only punished humans through birth pains, but all in nature groans because of what Adam and Eve did. Lucas, let me know if you ever see this. Let me know if I'm right, that you believe this stuff. But again, in my expectations is there would be zero, not one instance of animal suffering if your God exists.
Now, mark these words as we're finally moving from cosmic skeptics' emotional drama to actual scientific theory. I'll be citing an accomplished Austrian academic called Martin Balluch, who has studied applied mathematics, astronomy, physics, and theoretical physics.
What? What? He's citing a physicist?
Theory. I'll be citing an accomplished Austrian academic called Martin Balluch, who has studied applied mathematics, astronomy, physics, and theoretical physics.
You have studied this? Okay, what's his name? Let's look this guy up.
Who has studied I'll be citing an accomplished Austrian academic called Martin Balluch.
Martin Balluch. Martin. How do you... Oh, is that German? Yeah, found him. Yeah, he's a physicist. If he doesn't have a PhD, I would never debate him. Let's see here. Yeah, he does have a PhD. But he doesn't have a PhD in zoology or anything to do with animals. Mathematics and astronomy. What does that have to do with animal suffering? Or how... Like, has he done any research papers on animals? Animal behavior or anything like that? Oh, he's an animal rights advocate. He's probably a vegan, which means he's probably going to say that animals are happy in the wild so we don't cage them. Yeah, I see some biases coming up.
Who has studied applied mathematics, astronomy, physics, and theoretical physics. He has taught and done research at Cambridge and other universities. But there is more, and this will be of
all this appeal to authority.
Particular interest to Alex. One of the PhDs Dr. Balluch holds is on the philosophy of animal rights, and he has moved on.
What? PhD on the philosophy of animal rights? He worked for 12 years as a lecturer and researcher at the University of Vienna, Heidelberg, and Cambridge before leaving academia in 1997. Doesn't say that in his Wikipedia page. Says his PhD is in physics only. But, you know, maybe the Wikipedia is wrong. I'm looking, hang on. This is important. Lucas, if you're right and I'm wrong, then you need to change the Wikipedia page. PhD. There's only one instance of it on his Wikipedia page. So I think maybe there's a chance, a small chance you're wrong, that he doesn't have a PhD in anything to do with animals. Oh, hang on. Let me see if there's another bio of him here. He's the foremost spokesman in worldwide animal rights movement. Search PhD. No, I've found a second source, and it doesn't say anything about a PhD. And the word animal and PhD are not side by side, just physics. But it does say he's an advocate for animal rights. So if your source is this guy, now Lucas could still be right, and I'm just not finding it. But if I'm right and he doesn't have a PhD in any of this stuff, why should I listen to this authority?
On to become a prominent animal rights activist in Europe. He's co-founder of what is one of the most influential associations against animal factories in the German-speaking world, the Verein gegen Tier.
He has published papers in animal ethics at least. Okay, so he has published papers, but yeah, can anybody find that he has a PhD in anything to do with animals?
Fabriken, which I used to support in my early.
The second doctorate in philosophy took place in 2005 in the field of animal ethics, as J.R. Kurtz. Yeah, you can post the link. I'll accept it.
Early 20s. Balluch has led countless campaigns for animal rights and has received international awards for his efforts. Now here is what he says. Being just back from a trip with the tent into the wilderness, I realized once again the truth of the statement, most wild animals are happy most of the time. I say that because I keep seeing animals in the wild and they almost always seem content and happy. Some are frolicking in the sun, some are playing, some are making love, some are resting and simply enjoying themselves. In only very rare occasions do I see animals who are suffering. Well, I would not have thought this statement to be remarkable, but for some people it is. For people like Alex, you mean?
So he's giving an anecdote? I went on a trip, and I looked around at some animals, and they were all frolicking and having fun. So most of the time, they are not in pain. Is that what he's actually doing here? Let me try something here. I'm just trying this on the fly. Being just back from a trip with the tent into the wilderness. Being just back from a trip to a city in the United States, I realized once again the truth of the statement, most humans are happy most of the time. I say that because I keep seeing humans in the cities and they almost always seem content and happy. Some are frolicking in the sun, playing in the park, making love. Some are resting and simply enjoying themselves. In only very rare occasions do I see humans who are suffering. Well, I would not have thought this statement to be remarkable, but for some people it is. You notice if I put humans in this, it kind of sounds silly, Lucas? Again, put the word humans in here and then say that to people who are dying of cancer right now, or to parents who've lost their children to some type of disease. Like, I don't think you would be so quick to go whoosh with the idea of human suffering based on seeing a whole bunch of humans enjoying life. Right? That's reasonable, isn't it?
It is. For people like Alex, you mean? Let's continue.
But where's your PhD, Doug, says Rob C. Touche. I do not have a PhD. I have something better than a PhD. I have 2 master's degrees. So I'm more well-rounded than these flag-waving phony PhDs who are so specialized they don't even know how to change the oil in their car. I was raised on a farm. I can change the oil in my own car. I don't because I don't like my hands getting dirty, but I can.
The primary argument for the above statement that most wild animals are happy most of the time is not just my observation, but also from evolution. Being happy is an important psychological state for animals in order to be healthy. A happy animal has not just...
Being happy is an important psychological state for animals in order to be healthy. While most wild animals are happy most of the time, it's not just my observation, but also from evolution. Citation, please. Being happy is an important psychological state for animals in order to be healthy. Citation, please. How can you even know if animals are happy or not? At least the animals that can't talk. Maybe that's the wrong word, happy. Like, one could make the argument that being stressed is what we evolved to undergo in order to feel the need to even eat. I'm hungry. I'm starving. I must fight for food now. Therefore, I survive.
Just a much better immune system, he or she is also active and inquisitive. Being happy and content is a vital ingredient to procreate and to live safely and long.
Being happy and content is a vital ingredient to procreate. Citation, please. I mean, I shouldn't say, I don't know, but I get the suspicion that many animals in the animal kingdom don't even like procreation. I mean, I've seen animals, this is anecdotal, but I've seen animals like cry in pain just to reproduce. And then to even have kids, offspring, I mean, is the very painful thing.
Hence, evolution will produce animals who are mostly happy.
Evolution. Did they go around to various animals in the animal kingdom and do a survey? Are you happy on a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. Crocodile? How happy are you? Well, I chipped my tooth on a hippo the other day, and that kind of bummed me out for a week. But yeah, I guess, it's been a good month. Got the water in the creek there, and that bully, the other crocodiles, left me alone. So this month has been a good month.
Of course, if you assume evolutionary theory, this makes complete sense, doesn't it? Happiness is the psychological state most conducive to survival, which...
Citation, please. I mean, I could easily make the argument that being stressed is the most conducive to survival. The desperation to survive. If you're happy and relaxed, you're not aware of that rock falling off the cliff and going to knock you in the head and kill you. Right? I would dare say that even in the human kingdom, animal kingdom, us humans, the ones that are happy and relaxed, they're the ones who don't look both ways when they cross the street. They're too preoccupied with their own joy, and then they get hit by a car. It's those, think of those mothers who are just so worried about their kids dying, like every little thing possible that could go wrong, they're imagining in their head. They're not happy, but yet their kids survive because of them. Some others are not in their head right now and they're listening. Yeah, PineCreek is describing me. I'm just so anal about everything that could go wrong. I'm always worrying, but yet my kids are alive.
Which is why evolution will produce happy animals, rather than animals that are all sad and terrified because Alex believes them to be tortured day and night, which they obviously aren't. Hence the title of...
Alex never said that, tortured day and night. I'm sure Alex agrees that some animals have what we would call fun.
Baluch's article, most wild animals are happy most of the time.
What is he citing here? Is this the first citation?
Baluch's article, most and night, which they obviously aren't. Hence the title of Baluch's article, most wild animals are happy most of the time.
It's an article. It's not a study or a university publication. It's an article. My guess is Martin Bollock a vegan who's against caging animals? I bet you he is. I don't know, but I'm going to guess he is.
Finally, Baluch states, it is true that most animals die a violent death in the wild, but that does not contradict the above statement. If I am killed today, I would still have lived a mostly happy life.
Yeah. I was happy until I started suffering. Yeah, that's usually how it works.
Remember, I told you that while the issue of predation is a big deal for Alex, he misses the point completely, and Baluch exposes plainly and clearly why this is so. The 1, 2, or 3 minutes of pain an animal may experience before it dies does not negate the fact that it has led a happy existence for years before that. And by the way, there are...
Yeah. There's what animals like, let's pick rabbits, mice. There's a reason why mice have evolved to have, what, 20, 30, what's baby mice called? A package of baby mice. Because they don't really take care of their offspring, and they just let nature kill like 90% of them, and then the 10%, the strongest ones, live. But you know that the 90% that die from these huge litters, they were happy until they died of disease or a predator. And like, maybe Lucas is right. And when 90% of the animal kingdom of a certain species die off, just, weeks after birth, yeah, maybe those weeks were happy.
There are trillions of animals who die year in,
That's a
year
good picture.
out of old age or some sort of disease without experiencing any significant pain whatsoever. So let's put all the pieces.
He's pushing back hard on this because he realizes what I said earlier on in this live stream is true. Christians like him, I don't think, can justify or explain or make sense of animal suffering if you exclude humans. There's no heaven and hell for them. There's not an issue of free will to worship. It's not this issue of God doesn't want animal robots to freely worship him. It's like, if there's just one instance of animal suffering, why? I think the only thing he can say is morally sufficient reasons.
Together. According to Alex, animal life is supposedly defined by pain, a gloomy existence of endless torment in an earthly hell. He tells us that, of course, this is pretty much exactly what we'd expect to find if we assume that the all-loving and all-powerful God of Christianity does not exist. And he calls this Christianity's biggest historical problem. What is his case built on? Mainly on emotions. In contrast,
Yeah. And what is your case built on? A guy who went on a trip and saw animals frolicking, therefore animals don't suffer? That's what it sounded like to me.
Ballo shows, not by emotional appeal, but on the basis of his own observation,
He has shown, not on the basis of emotional appeal, but his own personal anecdotes on a trip he went on one day. So we can be confident that most animals don't suffer most of the time throughout all of history because of this guy who's written articles on animal whatever, who's probably a vegan and doesn't want caged animals, so he has the bias to have animals free. Although if you were to free steers and chickens and cows into the wild, they would be dead pretty soon. The inhumane thing would be to uncage domesticated animals, like your own pets. I live in the desert. If I was to throw my dog out into the desert and just have my dog fend for himself, oh man, a pack of coyotes would kill him so quickly. Or a rattlesnake would get him.
Experience, and chiefly the scientific theory of evolution, that animal life is defined not by pain, but by pleasure, as evolution will produce animals who are mostly happy.
Based on this guy's opinion, right? Or where did this guy get that idea from? I think my hypothesis is just as valid. Evolution will produce animals who are mostly stressed. So they're alert. So that they are worried, which compels them to search for food and shelter and avoid predators. By being happy and just sitting on your butt, you're going to die. There's the PineCreek quote. And well, how do you know that, PineCreek? I went on a trip one day and I saw animals interacting, and this is what I came up with. And then I wrote an article about it. Yeah.
Frolicking in the sun, playing, making love, resting, and enjoying themselves. You might describe this as an earthly heaven. So to say that Alex has gotten reality upside down when he told us that animal life is defined by pain is an understatement. Actually, the exact opposite seems to be true. That animal life is
Well, I got a question for Lucas here. Now, this is a guess. The average animal on planet Earth, what is the average percent of their life in pain or suffering? I'm just curious what he would say to that. Is it 90% pleasure, happiness, 10% pain and suffering? 80-20? Now, some animals will spend their whole life, they're born in pain and will die in pain. So that'd be 100%, right? If we were to average all the animals out throughout all history, where would you put that number? And again, it has to be a guess. No one knows for sure. But I think once you throw in mass extinctions, animals that have like 50, 60 offspring and just let them all die out within days or weeks of their birth, and the strongest survive. I mean, you got to at least give me 50-50, yeah? But again, my point is, why is there even one instance of animal suffering? It's if we put humans off the table. In your worldview, I don't think you can explain that other than just say it's a mystery.
Defined by pleasure. Now remember, it's Alex himself who asserted that it is incalculably easier to account for this suffering on an atheistic worldview. What he meant by this suffering is the messy bloodbath we supposedly observe in the real world, which, according to Alex, is what
this happiness we supposedly observe.
What we would expect to find if we assume that there is no God. Well, the only problem is that we don't actually observe this suffering in the real world, but only in the fictional world Alex has orchestrated for us in his emotional drama. What we do observe in the real world.
Yeah, this guy is really against emotions. I mean, well, but why is he always portraying Alex as emotional? Let me psychologize here for a second, because this is what I do. I'm paid on YouTube to psychologize people. I think Christians like him feel insecure intellectually about what they believe. So when a guy like Alex puts pressure on their worldview, they lash back saying, "You're the emotional one. You guys are not the intellects. We're the intellects. You're the emotional ones." Am I wrong? I sure get that impression from you, Lucas, that there's a little bit of insecurity in you, that you just need for either yourself or your followers to feel that you're not emotional. You're not. You are intellectual. We have intellectual reasons for our belief. Even though Jesus came and removed our guilt and took our burdens off us so we could breathe and give us hope and meaning and purpose for eternal life, which makes us feel so good and this real joy and contentment and peace.
World is that animals are, as science tells us, almost always content, suffering in only very rare occasions.
Whoa. Did you say science tells us that animals are almost always content? Didn't he just cite one guy who wrote an article? Now he's saying science tells us this? Now you could be right, Deflate, but you didn't present it in this video. Maybe he presents it down here. Maybe I'll have to eat my words. No, these are links to other types of videos. Oh, clarification. He is an ID guy. No, I don't see anything here. But I think he just went from one guy writing an article to science tells us.
Occasions and happy most of the time. Thus, if Alex is to apply his very own reasoning consistently, he would have to agree that it is incalculably harder to account for this happiness on an atheistic worldview, because it's the very opposite of what we'd expect to find if we assume that there is no God. At the same time, according to Alex's logic,
yeah, good point, Erica Lewis. Science doesn't say anything scientists do.
it is incalculably easier to account for this happiness on a Christian worldview, because it is, as Alex himself tells us, exactly what we would expect to see if we assumed the existence of an all-loving and all-powerful God.
This is interesting. Is Lucas saying that we would expect to see, if we assumed the existence of an all-loving, all-powerful God, we would expect to see happiness? Isn't that what he's saying? Maybe some level of suffering that we might not be able to fully explain. But I think Lucas is saying that we should or would expect to see happiness if we assume the existence of an all-loving, all-powerful God. It's interesting. You know why this is interesting to me? Because I think Lucas from Deflates is a Christian. And I think he believes that as a Christian, he's called to suffer here on earth for Christ's sake. Right? That you should expect to be persecuted, even maybe martyred, tortured for your beliefs. That's your expectation. That the world is against you as a Christian. You're either in the light or in the darkness. Anybody who's not a Christian, a true Christian, is under the power of the evil one. You're supposed to be light and salt of the earth. The gospel's foolishness to those who are not saved. So you should expect, see, what would we expect? As a Christian, Lucas, you should expect the opposite. You should expect not just some level of suffering, not just maybe some level of suffering. You should expect a lot of suffering and maybe some happiness. Am I wrong? Didn't Jesus teach this? Oh, a little bit of knowledge of the Bible is a bad, dangerous thing.
That is, some level of suffering that we might not be able to fully explain, but most of all, happiness. So where does this leave us? It leaves us staring at the rubble of Alex's supposedly biggest case against Christianity, which has utterly collapsed under the weight of reality. A reality
Sort of like the number of Christians in the United States is collapsing under the weight of reality.
that is infused with far more beauty and goodness than Alex imagines. Or to borrow a term from the most prominent atheist thinker turned Christian in the 20th century, we may say that Alex's case has collapsed under the weight of glory. In other words, and I find this to be true.
Yeah, the only thing I think Alex did wrong was, using, and I haven't watched Alex's whole video, so I don't know, but using animals are defined by suffering and pain, because that sets in motion a guy like Lucas just saying, in his mind thinking, Alex is saying like 99% of the time animals do nothing but suffer. It sets that expectation in Lucas's head, I think.
Truly beautiful, Cosmic Skeptic, one of the biggest atheist YouTubers, in putting forward his biggest case against God, has offered us and himself his own most powerful case for him. Now I submit it's on Alex to follow the evidence and the logic of his very own case where it leads. That is, to the cross of Christ, where the God he tried to argue against supremely revealed who he is. The all-loving source of the beauty and goodness we and the animals get to experience in the world he created.
Yeah. I gotta find that verse. Because I don't think, there's Christians in this live stream right now, I don't think God promises any happiness or joy here on planet Earth, does he? 1 Peter 2:21, to this you were called because Christ suffered, leaving you an example that you should follow his steps. In other words, you should follow Jesus' example and suffer with him. Christians, can I get an amen? Am I wrong? I think even if Lucas was here, he'd agree with me. You're not promised any joy, any happiness. Sorry, I shouldn't say joy. You're not promised happiness or a pain-free or even mostly pain-free life here on planet Earth. In fact, as a Christian, you should expect the opposite. I'm trying to find, where's the verse where God basically says that Christians are called to suffer for him? Paul said it, right? It's one of Paul's letters. Philippians 3:1-3. Or Timothy, here we go. For example, through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. John 15, Acts 14. Do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing. 1 Peter 4. This is John Piper talking. In other words, it's not strange. It's to be expected. Pain, suffering, persecution is to be expected, not happiness in this life. Indeed, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. So now let's rewind what he just said.
Follow the evidence and the logic of his very own case where it leads. That is, to the cross of Christ, where the God he tried to argue against supremely revealed who he is. The all-loving source of the beauty and goodness we and the animals get to experience in the world he created.
Yeah, it sounds like in this world, not the world after, because he's including animals. But that goes against Christian doctrine. Now, sure, when I was a Christian, I believed that I was called to suffer. When I was a Christian, I also believed that there were moments of joy, happiness, like human joy, earthly joy. But most of the joy that I think Christians get is in the hope that they have of eternal life. Am I wrong? Most of the joy and contentment that most Christians have is that they realize that all things work for good to those who love Christ and who finish the race. But that race, I tell you, is really hard. So what Lucas of Deflate is sort of saying here is animals have mostly a good life, and we humans have mostly a good life because that's what we would expect with an all-loving God. But he's forgetting all those things that Jesus said and Paul said, right? Am I wrong, Christians? Is there any Christians here who can back me up? Are you hearing or seeing what I'm hearing and seeing? But nice try, Lucas. Nice try. The thing is, I know there's Christians in here who are agreeing with me. And there might even be Christians in here who watched Deflate's video for the first time and thought, oh, he did a real good job. And then they hear me and go, well, wait a minute, PineCreek's right. Got to rethink things here. Recalculate. Recalculating, when your GPS, you take the wrong turn and you have to recalculate. That's what's happening here. Okay, I'm willing to take any callers. My expectations are low that anybody will want to call in. All you have to do is type that in your browser or your mobile device, and you'll get in. Let me put that there. PineCreek, you could have skipped to the knockout punch. Making me wait 70 minutes was excessive. Well, we're just waiting for Jesus to return, Sanjeev. What's your rush? Right? I do admit that at the end there, I was mocking and teasing Lucas a little bit. I implied he really didn't know his own belief system. Because I think if he did, or remembered, that this whole argument that we would expect a great place with an all-loving, all-good God, that Jesus said the opposite. I mean, now he's going to talk about sin, and sin entered the world, and it's not our fault. I mean, it is our fault, but it's always humans' fault when things go bad, and when things go good, it's always God's for His glory. No, He did it. All good things come from God. Right, Felix? The bit where you word sub the word human for animal was easily the strongest part of your response, says Jerome Robinson. Oh, thank you, Jerome. So if you came late, just watch that part. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Does Doug have any thoughts on the written debate between Apologia and Dr. Locke? I know it exists. Locke, I should say. And I read maybe a few sentences of it. But no, I don't have much interest in that. Poor Dr. Locke. Poor guy. He just loves Jesus, and he's trying to save other people from going to hell. And Apologia is doing the opposite. I mean, he's leading people to hell. Just a battle, spiritual battles. This is what's going on. Apologia, Dr. Locke, in a spiritual battle for the souls of our youth. That's what it's all about. PineCreek is the sower of discord and doubt. Consider me a fan. Yeah. Right, Felix, right. Felix knows I know Christianity. He knows that. Felix knows that that I know Christianity better than some flag waving phonies. Hey, welcome. Can I show your face?
Yep.
Oh, excellent. What's your name? Oh, Brad.
My name is Brad.
Yeah, I see that now. Hang on a second here. Are you a Christian?
No, I'm an atheist.
Okay. I won't hold that against you, even though you're going to hell.
I understand.
What do you have to say?
So I thought this was interesting as this argument from, exactly how much suffering that we're dealing with, where in my mind, the thought would be, why was the suffering picked to be the amount that it actually is? So why isn't there just a little bit more suffering or a little bit less suffering?
Yeah, this is the argument that Alex often makes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like the thought, my thought would be, whatever way you want to approach it, maybe that God did in fact want to maximize the amount of suffering.
Why do you say that God would want to maximize the amount of suffering?
So in some of the theodicies where they say, why does suffering exist? Suffering exists to glorify God.
Oh, right.
And so if I've picked the amount of suffering, one might say, why isn't there just a little bit more suffering? Because a little bit more suffering would be a little bit more glory to God.
Well, no, I don't think you can say that, because I'll steel man the other side, and they'll say, let's say the ratio of suffering to non-suffering on planet Earth is 50-50. Mm-hmm. And that's what gives God the most glory. If you add more suffering, that doesn't mean God gets more glory. It's exactly where it is, because that's the maximum already. I hear what you're saying, that if a little bit suffering gives God glory, why wouldn't more? Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think a Christian, especially certain branches of Christianity like Calvinism, would have to say the suffering we have on planet Earth is just right.
Yeah, it couldn't be any more.
And it couldn't be
any less.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that puts it at exactly, why isn't there any less suffering? Why isn't there any more suffering? Why does it have to be exactly where it is?
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I love to remind Christians of is many Christians will say God doesn't cause suffering. Mm-hmm. He allows it. But that doesn't get them out of the woods at all, because he could not allow it. But he chose to allow every instance of suffering, whether it's animal or human. He chose to allow each instance. Mm-hmm. And it's very powerful to think about that he could have chosen not to allow it. And a lot of Christians believe that much suffering on planet Earth, he doesn't allow. He puts his hand of grace or his hand of restraint over planet Earth all the time. So you're right. It just, what we do see on planet Earth, God desired it in the sense of he allowed it.
Mm-hmm. So, but, for every instance of suffering that there is on Earth, that suffering was disallowed in heaven.
Apparently, but some Christians might even say there is some suffering in heaven.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, then why isn't there more suffering in heaven?
It's just the right amount of suffering in heaven.
Yeah.
Like Inspiring Philosophy was open to that idea that there's suffering in heaven.
I've never even heard of that. I've never even heard the idea that there could be suffering in heaven.
Yeah. Some Christians will bite the bullet and say that they're open to the idea of suffering in heaven because of the idea of free will. They realize that's a real problem. Mm-hmm. To have free will in heaven with no suffering, and then why can't Earth be like that? And so, yeah. But what do you think of my argument where I said, why, if there's no humans on planet Earth, it's a hypothetical, and there's just animals, would they expect suffering, at least one instance of suffering, or would there be zero suffering among the animals?
So if I was thinking as a Christian, I would say no, there wouldn't be any suffering, because there is obviously no original sin to cause that suffering.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, like Satan inhabited the snake or whatever, And if that was a sin to allow that, because the snake was punished for deceiving and for allowing itself to be inhabited, like that was.
But if a Christian says that, what you just said, that if there were no humans, and let's say God created all the animals and just let them run for 1,000,000 years before he created humans, if a Christian says there would absolutely be zero suffering, then they're admitting that the suffering that we do have on planet Earth is caused by humans, and that animals are paying the price for what humans did.
Mm-hmm.
They have to admit that.
Yeah, which feels very, very bizarre.
Which is a very bizarre thing. And not only because it's not the animal's fault, mm-hmm. but there's no promise of making amends in the Bible, that these animals will get paradise. They're suffering on planet Earth, but just wait, it's for God's glory in the afterlife.
Yeah. So that brings us back to the suffering with a purpose, that the humans suffer with a purpose because our suffering glorifies God. But the animal's suffering, does that inherently have a purpose? Like, why does it that if us suffering glorifies God, and if there was no original sin, then no animal suffering would lower the amount of glory to God?
And believe it or not, some Christians I've heard posit the idea that maybe there is animal heaven to make up for the injustice to them on planet Earth. And they will mention things like a new heaven, a new earth. And on the new earth, there will be no suffering, and those animals will live on without suffering. But what about the animals that died before them? Like, do they have a soul that comes back and is resurrected? And so and I don't think they want to go there or can go there scripturally. So now they're just left with, it sucks to be an animal because they don't have any hope. But anyhow, I got someone else trying to get in. It could be a Christian, so I'll let you go, Brad. But thanks for hopping on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
At least there was someone. Someone wants in. It's open now. Randall Rouser thinks animals may have an afterlife. Oh, really? Maybe I did hear him say that, and that's why it popped in my head. Yeah, I think if you're a Christian and you entertain my thought experiment, there are Christians trying to break into my house. Don't worry, my working line German Shepherd will take care of that, Christian. If you're a Christian, I think you have to bite the bullet and say if there's no humans on planet Earth, we would expect zero animal suffering. But then if you say that, I think Lucas has to say that. If Lucas says that, then you basically definitely have to deny evolution via common descent, because there definitely was evidence of animal suffering before humans. And if you deny evolution via common descent, which I think Lucas does, then you're basically saying my authority is the Bible, and who cares what evidence I see for evolution, the Bible comes first. You have to turn off your YouTube pocket locker. Now that is a big. Is that a mic? What do you call it?
It's a mic cover. It's like covering the. It's like shielding it from outside sound.
Okay.
So isolation box, but it's a little neater than that. You should check it out. Actually, it's called Chaotica Eyeball. Good time. Yeah, check it out. You might like it.
But I kind of like the background noise, like when my dog barks. It's like your
sound is great anyway. So I don't know, whatever. But I'm a gearhead, man. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm a huge fan, huge fan.
Oh, thanks. So do you have your own YouTube channel?
I do. It's like I guess maybe if you look at Pocket Locker, you might find my stuff. But I'm nobody. Maybe I've got like 10 views on a video or something like that. My name's Jay Bundy though, so if you want to check out any of my stuff, that'd be awesome.
Okay, Jay.
I have a website, bundy.com. You can find my stuff there.
So what did you think of the video, the live stream I did here?
I didn't see all of it. I only caught the tail end of it, but I happen to have seen the original video, the one on animal suffering. And I also have sort of come across this with some of my Christian friends. So I wanted to say real quickly, I happen to be an evolutionary biologist. And I'm kind of like a hardcore atheist, but I come from a really fundamentalist family. And so I grew up in like Catholic schools and going to church.
Oh, your family gatherings must be a blast.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to work at a church myself as a youth minister. And so I still go to a church. I still go to a fundamentalist church. I play on the worship team. And one of the things,
but you're not a Christian at all.
Not a Christian. Yeah.
So on the worship. Do they know this?
Some of them do, not like my friends do, and like the leaders do, but like I wouldn't say the average person in their seat knows, but like people in my Bible study know. So I go to like a Bible study, and I try to go to everything with them, conferences, retreats.
How do you do that? I'm envious of you. How do you do that? Because people say I have patience and so forth, but I don't think I could have the patience to just sit in a pew or in a Bible study. And how do you do it?
Well, I feel super lucky, right? Because I'm an evolutionary biologist, I feel like I have like this sort of high level exposure to the other side, right? I am a professional biologist. And at the same time, coming from my background, I sort of get Christianity, and it's comfortable for me. It doesn't feel like, it's not difficult for me to be in a church or whatever. And so I feel really privileged to like be there when things are happening. And it sort of like opens my eyes. It makes me much more compassionate, because I'm like, oh, this is what it's like. It breaks down sort of the echo chamber. And then I'm also there because so many of them are like questioning, and they really are open-minded. And so I'm trying to help them understand how people outside of the faith see the faith. Like,
what denomination did you say?
They're like Baptist. They're like the churches you recently criticized with like the Hillsong guy or whatever, like just the sort of corporate
Furtick.
Furtick, yeah. They're like that kind of church.
Okay.
I don't want to put there, but they're like organized, and they have like a big campus ministry, and they're very much into like getting you in like while you're in college, and then giving your life to God, and maybe like being part of a church plant. So it's very intense. They're very serious.
Okay, I got to ask you a question on
whatever you'd like to ask. Yeah, sure.
Okay, did you have a PhD or a master's or a bachelor's?
I'm working on my PhD. I'm hoping to graduate this year. So I'm a PhD student currently.
Okay, and what exactly do you do now? You said you're an evolutionary biologist?
Yeah, I do. I work in an experimental evolution lab. So we actually do like my lab runs a famous like long-term evolution experiment with E. coli. I work with digital organisms. So but yeah, we do like experiments that test evolutionary theory currently, which is really interesting because it gives us the perspective of evolution is happening now, and we don't necessarily restrict our thinking of evolution to things that have happened in the past, because we're thinking about evolution in current experimental systems.
Okay, great. So what's your opinion on this? The video we just watched with Lucas from Deflate had a guy named Martin Balach on, and he said that happiness is a trait found in animals to help us survive. And so he was making the claim, I think, that majority of the time animals don't suffer and they're mostly happy. And I said, I think it's the opposite. I think it's the stress, the need to keep alert, to look for food, that a predator is not going to also kill you, to always have one eye behind your shoulder. That's what helps us survive. So what's your opinion on all this?
No, I'm with you. And not that I can say like my area of expertise is animal suffering, but I will say it was certainly very pivotal to Darwin's thinking, especially about random variation. Like when he first came out with his theory of natural selection, like some of his Christian supporters, the role they saw for God was like in sort of directing variation. Now we know that, mutations are random with regard to the organism's need. We didn't know that at the time, but Darwin really couldn't get on board with that idea. And part of that was because of the way he saw suffering in nature. For instance, the ichneummonid wasp, which have now been renamed the Darwin wasp, the way they kind of inject caterpillars and then, like, you know, consume them from the inside out. He was like, yeah, I can't see that being a benevolent and beneficent designer or whatever. So that was sort of really fundamental to his thinking about evolution. So I'm certainly on board with the idea that suffering is a huge part of it. And the other thing I was going to really say is that I think that, coming from the perspective of biologists, I think when you think about the theory of evolution, right, there's the fact of evolution, right, and then there's sort of the theory behind it. I think the real problem with it is actually the anthropocentrism, like this idea that, you know, it all happened for us. Even in a lot of times, even a lot of Christians that sort of like accept evolution, they have this interpretation where, like, oh yeah, evolution's fine, but it all was like part of God's plan to eventually lead to man.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that is really a huge part of what we struggle with.
Really, it was God's plan to lead to AI, which we're going to become extinct, and then AI will take over.
So I think the suffering thing is really where that kind of comes to a head, right? Because one of the things I was picking up even in your conversation with the last caller is, like, yeah, the Bible really goes in and says all this stuff about us, but it kind of leaves animals out of the picture. And then if we have to admit to ourselves that we are animals, right? And we're just not ready for that. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of Christians wisely actually recognize this. Like, they recognize that there's something bigger here than just how do we explain natural history, that there's this thing about our essence and where do we belong in the natural hierarchy. And that's what makes us, I think, more insecure than, oh, there are some really old fossils or whatever.
What makes us insecure?
The fact that we're not special.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that we're just another, you know, bipedal primate. Actually, we're not even the only hominin species, right? So if we were specially created, then what about, were those just like dry runs or dress rehearsals, I guess, for the big show?
Well, the guy I was critiquing, Lucas from Deflate, I don't even know if he believes that there were Neanderthals. I don't even, like, the worldviews can be so far apart. It's like, where do you even begin?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. The one of the reasons I called in, because I thought you would think my situation was really interesting, but I think a lot of your viewers, the ones that do have sort of Christianity in their background, and maybe even some of the ones that don't but are comfortable in those settings, are like probably some of the most effective people, I think, if they can actually engage in church communities. And the reason I say that is because, like, I came at this to, like, well, like, I'm a scientist, so, like, okay, whatever, I kind of think I have a clue about why maybe some of the biblical ideas are not really meshing with what we know today. But it wasn't really until I started having actual conversations with my church friends and really getting into the apologetics that I learned about formal reasoning skills and, you know, how to really make good arguments and what are all these logical facts. You don't learn that stuff as a graduate student in science. That's like not what you do. You do experiments, you write technical reports. You know, people aren't normally making circular arguments around you, so you don't need Hitchens razor. Everything is evidence. There are no claims asserted without evidence. So you have to learn these things. And it was really in finding channels like yours and a lot of the other content creators that got me reading more, that got me studying more. And
so what I'm hearing you say, Jay, is that I should go back to church.
If you can swing it, because here's the thing I've sort of realized. There's a couple things. One, we got to remember those to the extent that people are being denied truth or the ability to think for themselves, they're victims too. You know, they didn't wake up in the morning and decide, hey, I really want to be shut off from the world. I'd rather not know about science. You know, it's like they're indoctrinated into this stuff, and a lot of them don't know anything else. And it can be
Jay, you do know they can hear you right now, right? They're listening.
I'm just speaking from my own experience. And then And then the other thing I would say too is it's just you have the tools, and a lot of times, like, I've learned so much from you guys. So even as a scientist, it's like I've learned so much from just people who engage in these debates, who watch these channels, who actually know this stuff. So I feel like a lot of your viewers like actually have the tools.
Yeah.
And my thing is, I don't think we can do it without them. Like, a lot of people are like, well, don't you think it'll just go away on its own? Like, no, I really don't. I think they're really active. I think it's really easy now for someone to grow up in the church, go to high school in the church community, go through college, and never have that idea questioned, especially as we move.
You know what you're saying here, Jay? You're saying you're encouraging my ex-Christian viewers to not be happy and sit on the couch, but to force themselves to be uncomfortable and suffer a little bit and go back to their Bible studies.
Yeah, because what policies can we enact without their support? What systems in society can we change without their help? Like, we can't do this in separate camps. And so that's that's why I do it. I feel like it's an honor to be able to just say it's not a us versus them. It's all of us, and we're all trying to find the truth together. Now, there's some people that are going to ostracize you, that are going to talk about you behind your back, but most of them recognize that if you're genuine to them and you're there, like, and again, I let them preach, I let them evangelize me. I'm willing to change my mind.
So do you just listen, or do you ask questions, or do you make claims and statements once in a while? What do you actually do?
I go to Bible study, and sometimes, like, say, normally we're following up on like what was preached that Sunday. So a lot of times I'll talk about how I would have interpreted that passage as a believer, because like I grew up going to Catholic school, so I kind of had a non-literalist view anyway. And so I sometimes talk about like what I think that, and then sometimes I talk about what challenges that, but then sometimes it's not really relevant. Sometimes I think we're having a conversation about what the sermon tells us about how we're to live together. And so we can just talk about that. But for the most part, to be honest with you, I do it because they're my friends, right? We play in the worship team together. I love them. We're spending time together. We play games. We eat. You have relationships. It's not. You're not debating constantly,
right?
And a lot of times, I think that does more than anything is that they start to see that, like, oh, not all atheists are doing it because they want to live in sin, and there are people that are still willing to be my friend who just see it differently and want to be gentle and help me understand where they're coming from.
You want to hear something interesting, though? Like, I'm married, and I have the suspicion, I don't know this for certain, but I have the suspicion that my wife does not want me to go to Bible study or with her to church, because of exactly what you're saying, that she knows that I understand this stuff. I know this stuff. I know the other side, and I know how to talk to people about this stuff, which makes me dangerous.
Yeah, and I would say something you might want to think about is like boundaries. So, for instance, like I don't want to like talk about my church by name or anything like that because they're friends of mine, and I find your content inspiring. But I think if I were to do content like yours, where I was critiquing pastors, I probably wouldn't critique my pastor. And I probably wouldn't critique my grandfather or my mother's pastor, just to keep. So if you were going to go to church with your wife, I would say just go to church, sing the songs, hold hands, and go home. But if you're going to go to church and try to engage, maybe go to a different church for that. You know what I'm saying? Just to
you want to hear something hilarious? What you just said happened. When I first started my channel, I critiqued a pastor in my city, but it wasn't my pastor. A pastor in my city. I critiqued on the issue, a sermon he did on slavery. So it was like a 30-minute, 40-minute live stream or video I did, and I put it on my YouTube channel. This was like 4 years ago, and he found it.
Wow!
And he got his lawyer, and he threatened to sue me because it was why I no longer go to church, sermons like these. What ended up happening was he got let go of that church that he was in, and he was looking for employment. And when people were Google searching his name, my video was one of the first hits.
Oh,
why I no longer go to church, sermons like these.
job prospects.
Yeah, and so and it gets funnier. So anyhow, he threatened to sue me. I took the video down, even though it was clear I had fair use. But my wife said, my wife basically begged me, just take it down. Like, it's not worth.
No, you don't need this one.
Yeah. And then about a year later, he ends up going to my wife's church.
Wow.
So now he is in communion with my wife, in fellowship with a woman whose husband, almost destroyed his career. I think maybe I did destroy his career. I don't think he's gotten a pastor job since.
Wow. Yeah, it's a small world. That's an incredible story, man. But yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I'm sure you've got other callers or other stuff.
Well, I'm gonna wrap it up soon anyhow. But yeah, definitely keep in touch. I'll check out your channel, Pocket Locker, and then you said also Jay what?
Bundy, Jaybundy.
Bundy. Okay, as in like the other Bundy.
Yeah, my dad is Al Bundy, and for real.
Your dad's Al Bundy, like the 70s sitcom or 80s.
Yeah, like Married with Children. Yep.
That's funny. Okay,
but, dude, so much for the content you make. You're an inspiration to me. I love what you do, and you really helped me out a lot. And I'll definitely be in touch.
Okay, thanks for hopping on.
For sure. Take care. Thanks for taking my call.
That was cool. It was nice to have someone working on their PhD in evolutionary biology and agreeing with me that no, probably the opposite of happiness is better for survival. PineCreek, the pastor destroyer. Doug, please meet him. What, the pastor? Where can I find this video? It's down, humongous. I think I still have it. Maybe I should re-upload it. But of course, it's one of my first videos, so the sound quality, the video quality is much worse than today. But I wonder what would happen if I was to republish it. Maybe I will. That'd be funny. But I don't know if he still goes to my wife's church. If he still goes to my wife's church, that would be bad, right? Yeah, I must say, Wadabaka, having Jay come in and talk makes me a little more excited to go back to a Bible study or church. But his church, I think, is a little different than a church that I would go to, at least with my wife. Do a remake? That's not a bad idea. We got another caller. Do I take it? What time is it? 5:05. Are you a Christian caller? Hello? Bad connection. You would be hated in Bible study, says Chen. Yeah, I think you're right. Well, the thing is, once a Christian knows you're an atheist, like the shields go up. The full armor of God is intact. My apologies to Lucas from Deflate. He was scheduled to come on and defend his video, but we ran out of time. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care.